Good morning. Hello, Marie-Claude. Good morning, good morning. Good morning, Victor. Thanks for checking in. One by one, we're coming on board. Good morning, Grace. What a great way to start the day. You are right. So, good morning from the studio. This is the first episode, which I hope there will be a lot of these. This is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, and I think that now is a really good time to start these demos, tutorials, these midweek videos, just so that we can get excited about stitching, review things, learn new techniques, etc., etc., etc. So here we are at the studio this morning, and I want to thank you all for joining me. This is going to be the first episode of Stitchin' with Billy, which I think is going to be fun. And today, you can't see everything on my desk, but there's a lot of things here. So today we're going to discover what project am I working on, how am I doing it, what are the techniques that I use, what are some of the new projects that are going to be coming in future videos, what are some of the notions that are available. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning experience, and we're going to go through this, and hopefully we're going to max out at an hour at the most. And if we finish early, we finish early, but I do not want to go over 60 minutes per video because I think that that's going to be too long. And I've got my coffee in hand, so I hope you all have a cup of your favorite beverage, whatever that may be, and whatever hour in the day that is, wherever you are. So, just to let you know, today the project that we're going to be centering on is the project that I'm currently working on, and a pattern that's on the way to a lot of you this morning because you purchased this last week and the mail is delivering these patterns across the miles. I'm waiting for a lot more to come in, but we're going to be working on this pattern that is called Frosty and Snowflakes. So this is the project I'm working on at the moment. Frosty and Snowflakes is a beautiful pattern, one of hundreds of patterns that are available from Buttermilk Basin. I am so blessed because Buttermilk Basin, a little bit more coffee. Buttermilk Basin is the brainchild of my really good friend Stacy. I don't know how many of you know Stacy, but I was very blessed to have met her a few years back at the international quilt markets throughout the US. I see her every time we get a chance to go to market. We always spend time together. She's an absolute fabulous person. And all of that fabulous energy that Stacy does goes right back into all of her designs, and everything she touches is like liquid gold. So Stacy, we really love your designs. If you see this, we really are enjoying this project. And if you're not already doing this pattern, you're probably going to want to order it from the studio so that you can get involved in this as well. So Frosty and Snowflakes, that's the pattern that I'm working on, and that's the project that you see right here. Okay, so first of all, what I'm using and what I'm sort of enjoying, which helps me kind of complete my projects a little easier. This is my cutting desk, my invoicing desk. I do a lot of things at this because it's a larger table in my studio, and it's always accessible, and I clean it off rather quickly, and so I've always got this table ready to go. If I'm sitting down and I want to work on a project leisurely, then I want everything at my disposal all around me. I don't want to have to get up and look for things. If I'm running around, my ironing board is over there, my cutting is here, I'm all over the place. But like this, everything is right here and I really don't need to move. So if you see what I have here, this is my June Taylor cushioned quilter square and blocker. So this is quite thick. It's quite large. It's what? It's, how big is this one? It's 18 by 24. It's cushioned. I can actually pin a block, pin swatches on here and sort of like do a design or whatever, but it's my ironing surface. And so I can use this on my work table as my ironing surface. I've got my Oliso iron out here, my mini travel. You can see this one. I don't know if it's showing on there it is. Love this because even though it's a small travel size, it's a steam iron. And so it's perfect when I want to work on my projects using my June Taylor cushion quilter square. I'll tell you more about these details, more details on these later. And I have pricing already prepared on these in case there's people out there that will see some of the things that I'm using today and may want to add that to your sewing space as well. So that's very important for me is my ironing surface and my iron. The next thing I want to have is I want to have lots of scissors. A lot of you bought these great sets of scissors, which are 4 different sizes. They worked well for me for working on this project. They're right here. I've got my needles, my thread. For this project, I'm using an HP pencil. That's what I needed. I've got a little tray that I can put all my scraps in because I don't want to throw anything out, and you'll understand why as we go through this tutorial. I've got my heat and bond fusible over there in the bolt so that it's readily available for me. I even have my little thread snips because I cannot be anywhere without my thread snips, and I think that's all that I needed for this project because that's where I am. So, let's talk a little bit about Stacy's Snowman and Frosty and Snowflakes before I tell you a little bit more about some of the other projects coming from the studio and some other products that are available to make your stitching a little easier. First of all, when you get Stacy's pattern and you open it up, inside you have all the directions for the pattern, but you also have this template, which is the scallop that goes all around the outside of this table mat, and that's the shape that you want. But in the pattern, you're going to have 1/2 of the scallop. You need 2 to make the whole size. So what I did, normally what you could do is take a larger piece of paper, tape them together if you don't have a larger piece and you want to trace another one like this, cut them on the straight line, tape them together, cut it out, and you can make your scallop piece. Normally in wool applique and in other projects where you're doing a specific style of a cut table topper, that's exactly what you do. You just make your full-size template, you cut it out, you lay it on your wool, your fabric, you cut around it to get that shape, and you end up with this beautiful beautifully shaped table topper. We're not going to do this one that way because I want to show you how I do mine. And I kind of feel that how I do mine is a really great method because it takes a lot of headache after you're going to finish it once your hand stitching is done. So we're going to do it that way, okay? So this is what I did to do my scallop runner. I simply took my large piece of my fusible interfacing. I laid it on my table. I put my template underneath like this. I drew one side along with that straight edge. Then I simply turned it around underneath so that my 2 straight edges lined up, and I drew the other half, and I ended up with a beautifully shaped scalloped template, which I will show you here. There you go. That's on my fusible. interfacing, my fusible web. So now that I have it traced, I cut out all around the template, but I cut out leaving about 1/4 inch outside of the drawn line. So you can see my pencil where I did my edging, and then I left about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch outside of that. Okay, so there's a reason why we're going to do that. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take the background of your table mat, which is going to be the kind of textured wool. All of the products I'm using in this particular project are wool, just to let you know. You then want to get ready to make this scalloped table topper base before you start applying any of your appliques. Okay, so now some of you may decide that you want to do that all over. That's a waste of heat and bond, first of all. And secondly, we don't need that extra thickness underneath the whole table topper, so you don't have to do that. So I'm going to show you how I did mine. So what you need to do is, you know where you left 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch outside of the pencil drawing on this template? You want to cut out the inside, leaving 1/4 to 1/2 inch inside the line. So if you look at mine, what I've done here, you will see that I cut out the inside, leaving 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch inside the line. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. Then what you're going to do is you're going to lay that frame. So I can do this with you. These are my paper scissors, by the way. So these are my scissors that I do not use in fabric. So I am going to cut this out with you here so that you can see what I'm doing. Now it can be 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, you see, inside that line, okay? And you don't have to be too specific that it measures exactly 1/4 or 1/2. You just do it rather quickly and easily to see how it goes together. And then I'm left with this really weird frame. So then I lay out my wool. Now wool usually don't have a right side or a wrong side, and sometimes if it does, you'll notice that you may like the wrong side more than the right side. It's just in wool projects are very forgiving, and so you really don't need to worry too much about it because it just flows together. So then I lay my frame on the back of my wool background like this. I just lay it flat. And then I take my center and I'm going to put my center back inside like this, just because I want to make sure that I fit that frame perfectly around that center so that I'm getting the exact scallop shape that Stacy has in her template. And you see how nice that is? It looks really, really good. So now that's all lined up really sweet. Then what I'm going to do, since that is all tucked in like that, I can now easily pull out the center. Okay, so I can pull the center out like this because I don't need that center. And then what I can do is I can take my iron, which I've already heated up, and I'm going to iron this frame all around my wool. Okay, so I'm ironing this frame now. Right now, I'm just doing it rather lightly because I don't want this frame to move. Just rather lightly. Because now I've got it sort of like stuck in place. You see that? Now I'm going to go around it and I'm actually going to use a little steam. Now you'll find there's a lot of designers that say that when you do wool applique or when you are applying the Heat and Bond fusible that you use a dry iron. I just discovered, and this is one of my tips, is that when I use steam in my iron to apply my Heat and Bond fusible, there's something about that steam that helps activate the glue in the bond and it becomes much more secure. So I'm going to suggest a little steam, and with this iron I push the two sides and I get that steam that I want in my iron. So then after I've done that, the important thing is that I give it a minute or two to cool. Don't cut into your appliques or into your fusible while it's still hot. It can be a little gummy on your scissors. It can be a little sticky when you're cutting. So let it cool a little bit. It only takes a minute or two. And after it cools, then you can go ahead and cut. Then what I want to do is, I think I'll use my pink scissors. It kind of goes with the shirt this morning. So this is cooling down pretty good. Then what I want to do is I want to cut around that template, removing that 1/4 to a 1/2 inch that's outside. So I'm actually just cutting around this complete template on the pencil line. Now, as you notice, what I'm doing is I'm giving you guys a tutorial on the project that I'm doing and how you can do your own. You will not be able to get any patterns to download, anything that you can copy from here. This is the designer's livelihood. Everything is copyright. So I can do a tutorial to show you what to do, but you're not going to get all the shapes and the patterns and stuff. You're going to have to buy the pattern if you want to make your own. So I'm sure that you all know that, but I just want to put that out there before I get a message asking where you can download any of this, because you cannot. So I'm just going to cut all around this because I want to show you guys just how fast working with wool can be. So first of all, my first project I wanted to share with you is wool applique, because I've been getting a lot of messages from many of you telling me you've never worked with wool, you want to try it, you've seen it different places. I'm going to tell you, wool applique has been like one of the techniques that I have loved the most in all of my stitching. It's a fabulous way to stitch. It's very relaxing. It's like, I compare it to like stitching with butter. So you can't get smoother than that, right? See how fast that was? And look, I have a beautiful scalloped mat. Look how stunning that is. How fast. But I have that little bit of a 1/4 inch of the fusible all the way around the mat. Why do I do that? Well, this is why. So, let me just pull this back in a second. 1 second. This is the one I'm working on, so that's why I'm pulling that one back. It's the same thing. It's got the scallop and it's got the 1/4 inch. So I'm going to take all my applique pieces. I'm going to put them all on here, and we're going to do a little bit of that together in a moment, but I want to explain first why we're doing what we're doing with the back on this fusible web. So I always do that whenever I work with a table runner that has a curve, a scallop, even if it has a straight side, but it has kind of a scalloped end, I will always do this technique. And the reason that I do that is because when I finished all of my stitching on top and I'm ready to back my table topper, I want that table topper to be nice and clean with a perfect edging. I just want it to look great. So what happens is, once I finished all of my applique, I can peel off this little band that's all the way around my table topper, and that's going to expose that little bit of 1/4 to 1/2 inch of glue that's left behind by the fusible interfacing. What that does is that I can then choose a backing fabric for my topper. It can be wool, it can be 100% cotton. I've used both for backings of my table toppers. I can then lay this table topper with the paper removed on top of the wrong side of my backing fabric, because I want the right side out. I can then iron all around it, and what happens is that all of the edges are going to fuse to that fabric. So I no longer need to try to cut out a perfectly scalloped background that's going to perfectly match my scallop top, because once that is fused all around my cotton or my wool backing, I can then trim off all the excess wool or fabric by just following the design of my top of the scallop table topper, and it's going to be stuck together so it's not going to move. Then when I want to finish it, whether I want to use a whip stitch or a blanket stitch all the way around, I can just stitch all the way around. Nothing's going to move. It's all stuck in place. It's perfect. So that's why I do that kind of backing for my table topper. So now you've got that great trick, and you'll love that if you try it. So make sure you test that out. And a little bit of coffee. And on we go. Now the beauty about Stacy's patterns is that Stacy has already reversed all of the designs for the applique, which means you do not need to change anything around. You just trace everything to your fusible web. And then once you trace them to your fusible web, you simply cut them out and apply them to the backs of the specific colors of wool. Remember, if I go into Stacy's design and I pull out the snowman applique, I want to trace that to my fusible web. But when I cut it out, I want to cut out that shape on the paper a little bit outside of the lines. Do not cut it out on the lines, because then when you apply it to your wool and you fuse it to the back, you will then cut out your applique pieces directly on the line, and that gives you the exact shape that you need for your applique. Another thing to remember, this is very important when you're doing a layered applique. Okay, so you can see I've done one snowman on here and one snowflake. Now I want to be able to add another one to show you what I do. So sometimes when you cut out your applique shapes, sometimes it's hard. It's not really hard, but some people have problems getting the backing off. I never do, because it just peels right off. But if you do, just take a pair of scissors or thread snips and score, just draw it along the paper so that you score the paper on the back, and you can just peel it right off. Look how great that is, and you've got your applique already done. So the thing about this snowman, though, is that let me just show you on the applique. If you look at the applique of the snowman and you do exactly the shape all around, exactly the head, whatever, that's the shape you will get. But whenever you have a layered applique, for instance, the head goes under the hat a little bit. So when you're doing your shape on your paper, you want to add a little bit to the head at the top, because that's going to go underneath the cap. You'll do the same thing with the hat. When you're making the hat shape for your fusible, you'll add a little bit to the bottom of that hat, because the top of the head and the bottom of the hat are underneath that trim on the hat, and that's going to cover those two edges. You don't want pieces of wool to kind of flush together. You want them underneath, overlap. You want everything to kind of flow, so that's why you want to add a little bit to it. Now, I didn't cut my shape of the snowman in two pieces and have them join underneath the scarf. I just simply did one big piece for the snowman, and there it is, and it fits right over the snowman shape. So you can do him in one piece. Also, I did the same thing for the scarf. I did not cut the scarf in 3 pieces. I did the scarf in one large piece because that worked perfectly. And as you can see, it looks really fine here. So that's the way that I did those. The snowflakes, rather than do the snowflakes in like 6 little things, I had the whole piece joined in the center and I cut one complete snowflake piece. It's much easier to handle. Then you just simply peel off the backing. So let me do a snowflake first, because the way that the table mat is done is that you've got a snowflake, snowman, snowflake, snowman, snowflake, snowman, and it works all the way around. Now, if you ordered a kit from the studio, your wools will pretty much be the same when it comes to all of the pieces that we're using in the appliques, but the background for the larger piece of wool, for the background, I usually use a lighter weight wool, not the heavier one, because this is going to be backed, and so I don't want it too heavy. This will change a little depending on what's available from my distributor, but it will be pretty close. I mean, I'm going to always try to keep everything pretty much the same. You could use a ruler, and sometimes when I'm doing applique, I will measure and say, okay, I'm about 1 inch from here and about 1 inch from here. So I want everything to be kind of like, you know, all lined up. I've peeled the back off of the snowflake. I've got my iron here. I usually just put it down dry first to let it set a little so that it's not going to move. And then I apply the steam, and let's get that glue melted, and let's see how that works. So I've got this iron turned up like on its max, so it's going to give off a lot of heat. But this iron also has its silicone mat, and I can put the hot iron back on that silicone mat and nothing is going to burn. And so you see that snowflake is already put down. So now I'm going to do a snowman. So I have the body, so I'm going to measure underneath here, and I have about 3/4 of an inch from the base of the snowman to the scalloped edge. So I'm going to apply that one first. Okay, so I can apply that first because everything else is going to go on that snowman. There's nothing going underneath it, so I'm going to put that down and apply that one. I put a little heat first, dry to get it to set. Then I apply the steam and let the steam melt that glue and lay it down, okay? So, nice. So then I'm going to peel the backing off of the rest of my pieces. I think I may have, in the hurry of everything this morning. Oh, here it is. I thought I lost my hat, but I have my hat here. So I'm simply going to peel the backing off of all of my pieces. There's my hat. And there's my scarf. And there's the trim that goes on my hat. This is the top of the bristles of the broom. Then you've got the stem or the handle of the broom. Remember, when you're making the appliques, you're doing 4 of everything because there are 4 of everything on this table topper. And then I've got the orange nose. So there are all my pieces, and I can get rid of that. The one thing about it is that when you're cutting out your wool shades, well, when you get into wool applique in general, you'll discover that a lot of times the pattern only calls for a smidgen of something. It could be a nose, a mouth, a snowflake. It could be the part of a tree. A tree could be divided into 3 or 4 different greens. You only use small portions in many of the designs. Because of that, you want to keep a little tray handy. And in here, you want to put all those extra little pieces because later on you can use all of these scraps and make a whole different project with those scraps. And so never throw out your wool pieces. Wool pieces are generally sold by the square inch. We buy them at the shops in large quantities. Some shops will sell you only the larger quantities for your projects. I don't. I usually measure, for instance, if someone sends me a pattern and they need a specific size of wool in different colors for that pattern, I cut the pieces that they need for the pattern and then generate the invoice based on how much they've used. So if I have a piece that is 4 inch by 5 inch, it is 4 times 5, 4 fives, 20 times 10 cents, $2. So that's $2 a piece. So 10 cents a square inch is the average price of what wool would be here at the studio. Backings, because of the lighter weight, they would be less. So this is where we save a little on our projects by the backing being a little bit of a lighter weight. So it's all balanced into the project. So here I've got my snowman put down. Then, of course, we have the hat. So the hat goes on top of the snowman. And then we need to put, do you see there's a little bit of a space between the hat and the snowman? Then when I put the trim of the hat over it, it covers the opening between the hat and the snowman. Then I need to add, I'm just going to turn this towards me for a moment because I just need to be able to visually see how I'm applying it to make sure I balance with the other one. I'm just going to put my scarf on here. Just do it. It's like coloring, but you're just doing your layers. Then I'm going to put my broom. And the bottom of the broom bristle overlaps the handle of the broom a little bit. And then, of course, the nose. You want to put the nose so that the nose is far enough up so that on the pattern, you have a place to put the little buttons for the mouth and nose. And we're going to talk about those in a moment. So once I have them all laid out, and I kind of like that snowman. And remember, no two snowmen are the same, so if they're not exactly the same, no worries. So I'm going to take my iron that's really hot, and I'm going to lay it down. You don't want to do what I just did. I just moved my iron, but I caught it really fast. You want to make sure that when you put the iron, that your iron does not move. So if you are new to wool, rather than do all of this layering in advance, you might want to put one piece down, iron it, 2 pieces down. Like, just do it with a steady hand because you do not want the pieces to move. Once they stick, they stick. And if you remove them, you're going to have glue on your background. You don't want glue on your iron either, by the way. That's worse than glue on your background. You can also use a silicone sheet over your applique, which will help you not have any glue on your iron, but I generally am not big on that with wool. I want to get more heat into my wool, but I have another little tip I'm going to share with you in a moment, which will help you set that wool even a lot more. So these are all setting really nice. I just need to get some steam on there. The steam really, really helps that wool stick to that background. So lots of steam is really, really great. I'm going to go back over my snowflake once again. I want to make sure that it's all really well set. The beauty about it is that while it's still warm, if you want to tip and, nick and tuck a little bit, you can do that. It's really easy to do. Sometimes if you feel like, oh, I would have liked to have moved it a tiny little bit, there's a little bit of forgiveness in that you can heat it again, let the glue melt a bit, move it a little bit, and you can fix a little nip tuck. Is quite easy with wool applique. So, a little bit more steam. And that's going to set all those pieces really good. I have discovered that when you're doing applique, and sometimes the steam I find helps you with this, but when you're using a dry iron, and if you're using a white or a cream wool, if you've got your iron very hot and you leave it too long in the wool, you can get a bit of a scorched appearance on the wool, and you don't want that. So here I've got 2 of my snowmen and 2 of my snowflakes already done. What I usually do afterwards is I turn it over and I press it again with lots of steam from the back side, because this side is the closest to the glue on my heat and bond. So I like to do a little bit of extra applying from the back. Suzanne, for my wool, I generally use General Scissors. This morning, I would have used my little precision scissors, which are the new ones I'm selling here at the studio. But they are so hot that they're all sold out, and my new shipment hasn't come in yet, because the precision scissors gives me the tiny points that go into the little crooks and crannies of the applique pieces, like the snowflakes. But these are the General Scissors that I've been selling here at the studio. They work really well. And these are the ones, they are $13.55 for a set of 4 pairs of scissors, by the way. So really great way to add scissors to your notions without having to spend a lot of money. You see I've got 2 already done. That's how fast it is. Now I just need to cut all the balanced ones, add them all the way around, and then I need to stitch. Okay, so how am I going to stitch the wool? Well, first of all, some of you are going to say to me, but I don't like to use a lot of heat and bond on all of my applique pieces because I just like to do them without anything. You do not have to do the bonding for all of the pieces. You can cut all your wool shapes out and you can sort of stick them in place using the new Wonder Dots, which are the glue dots that I have here at the studio. So you can apply a little dot on the wool, stick it, and it's going to stick in place, and it's not going to be anything underneath it like the bonding, and you just stitch around it afterwards without having to fuse it. But I like to fuse a lot of my pieces, especially when they're small. It really helps me. I find that my pieces move less, and the smaller pieces are a little bit more tedious sometimes, so I like to have everything bonded down, and it's really, really great. Tracy, I have used soft fuse, but at the moment, the item I'm using in my class is the Heat and Bond Light. Heat and Bond Light is my favorite when it comes to wool applique. I use 2 kinds of Heat and Bond Light for wool applique, Heat and Bond Feather Light for all of my fabric applique. The scissors, Tracy, 4 pairs are $13.55 for 4 pairs of scissors. So that's how I do the applique. So I'm just going to lay this one over here. Now we're going to talk about stitching. When you're working with wool, wool is a heavier product than your cottons. And so when you're working with wool, you need a needle that's going to penetrate the wool easily. And for that, I use the Fons & Porter wool applique needles. So the Fons & Porter wool applique needles. Why I use them, they are a beautiful larger needle. It has a gold eye on it, and the gold eye is quite large compared to some other needles. The larger eye in the needle is necessary because what happens is, as the needle is going through multiple layers of wool, that larger eye and the larger needle is making that channel, which brings the heavier threads through the channel, and you'll have less chance of having like knots and things like that. For the stitching, there are 3 threads that I use quite often, and I'm going to share those 3 with you. one of you have access, most of you have access to the DNC embroidery floss, which is really, really great for doing your hand stitching over your applique pieces. When I use DMC floss or Presentia or any of the other floss, Valdani, whatever, usually it's 6 strands. 6 strands is quite large, and I would never use 6 strands when I'm doing hand stitching. The most I use is 3 strands if I'm doing a larger applique piece. Sometimes only 2 strands, because I find 2 strands gives me the look that I want. Because you know, when you do appliques on fabric, you want to hide the applique stitches. It's not something that you always want to see in hand stitching. When you're doing applique on wool, you want to see the stitching. It's the stitching that shows on the surface of the edging that makes that piece. If I'm doing a very tiny piece, for instance, the nose is not too tiny, but it is a little small. Instead of 2 strands, sometimes I use 1 strand. So I kind of judge how many strands of floss I'm going to use based on the size of the applique piece that I'm doing. You can also use a pearl thread, which sometimes comes in these balls. It sometimes comes on these skeins. The pearl thread is a heavier thread. It can run in different numbers, 3, 5, 8. Depending on the size of your applique, that's a single strand. So there's nothing to take apart. You just use the pearl thread as it is, and that's what you use to hand stitch your applique pieces. I love the wool thread from Valdani. It's 100% wool. That wool thread with wool applique, it blends together so well. I use the Valdani wool thread quite a lot, and so it's a little bit more expensive than the DMC floss, but the look is totally different as well, and it's just so lightweight. It's like a feather. And the beauty about the threads is that I usually try to bring in threads that sell by the skein, because I can send those in an envelope rather than a package. Some of you have packages going out of here every week. Some of you have envelopes. I want to be able to send to everybody for that letter rate, so I usually try to purchase in skeins. So if I were to take, let's say I were to take a piece of the thread. So let me just take a piece of the wool thread, and I want to thread that into the eye of my needle. I was going to do that without wetting it, but old-fashioned, wet it, get it in the eye. Normally this goes in first try, but now I'm live, and you know what that is? It means that things don't work the way they usually do when you're live. Now I forgot to take out my needle threader, so that's another issue. Well, just a second. Normally this goes in really fast because this is a very large needle, so maybe I just needed to have another coffee this morning. So here you go. So this is the way it is. So I'm going to test the applique with a red thread on the white snowman to show you how I stitch. So normally what I do is I bring my needle in through somewhere further away to slide it underneath my applique to kind of get the tail of the thread lost inside. And then I bring it up about 1/8 of an inch in from the side. I need you to forgive me for 1 second and wait because I have a courier delivery which was unexpected. I apologize. That was a courier that rang my bell, so I had to pick it up. And it's 4 flights down. Whew, 4 flights up. Okay, so now I've got my needle brought up into the stitching. And the way I stitch is this. Where I come up in my wool, I go under the edge, right out from that, and come up about 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch further down. And I do that making that little line that I call a whip stitch. This is the kind of stitch that I use in all of my wool applique. Now I'm having a moment of, because I ran. And that's how I use all my stitching, do all my stitching for wool applique. I can't wear a thimble, so I very often use the leather thimbles, which are the ones that come out from Colonial. So these are self-adhesive leather dots. They fit right on the finger that usually the needle hits. And because I only have the dot, I can feel the project, no metal on my finger, and that works really well for me. Next up, I'm wondering if I've covered everything. Were there any questions from anybody on this project before I go and show you guys something else? Anybody? I'm just waiting to see if there's any questions so I can answer, because then I'm going to go on and show you some other things. So what I'm going to do is I am going to be finishing this project this weekend, probably. And my goal is each week, each Wednesday at 9 will be a new project. But each week I will start by showing you the completed project from the week before so that we can do a sort of a little recap. Connie, the needle that I use is the one that's the wool applique needle from Fons & Porter. The Fons & Porter needles are $5.50 and you get 10 in there. So if you want them, they are the Fons & Porter wool applique needles for $5.50. I will recap everything I used. The Frosty and Snowflakes pattern is $12.50 if you haven't already ordered. If you want the wool applique kit, which gives you everything that you need for the background and all the appliques, those kits are $24.95. You can order those here at the studio. They do not include the pattern. The pattern is $12.50. It is separate. And the reason I do that is because some people will order one pattern, several kits. If I put one in every kit, you're going to be getting all these extra patterns and you really don't need that. So that takes care of that. For the eyes, I have these on back order, everybody. So they're not in stock at the moment. But these are the tiny black buttons that are 1/4 of an inch, which are going to be the ones that we use for the belly of the snowman. And these are the tiny micro black buttons that are very, very tiny. And those are going to be used for the mouth. So these larger ones will be the belly and the eyes. These tiny, tiny ones will be the mouth. And they are $3.75 a packet. So if you want them, tiny, black, micro black, those are the ones that you want. I already recapped, if you want the scissor sets, they're $13.55 for a set. The Wonder Dots have been going crazy here. They are $2.95 for a package of 60 if you want those. They hold your applique pieces, whether it's wool or fabric, in place, getting ready for you to stitch. Let let me see, what else do I use? Oh, my June Taylor quilter's block, if anybody was looking. That one is $64.95. That is worth its weight in gold. You know, I normally would probably use, if I was doing a smaller project, I would probably use my quilter's fleece, my wool mat, but this was a bit larger, and the mat that I'm doing, the table topper, didn't fit on here, so I didn't use it. But that's another great tool, so you can get that here at the studio if you are looking for one. The travel iron from Olicio is a special price. It's regular $124.95, but you can get it for $99.95 for the travel iron. And I already gave the price for the June Taylor ironing square. That one is $64.95. The thread snips are back in stock. Those are great. I've gotten a lot of great comments on those. They are $2.95 if anybody wanted to know about those. They're great when I'm hand stitching to cut my threads. Any more questions before I move on to some new products? The Heat and Bond Light fusible, some of you may want. That is $3.25 a yard. It can be folded and put in an envelope without much problem. I think I covered everything that I used. Did I forget anything? So before I forget, some of you wrote me and asked about that table runner that I showed you guys in the photo when I did the announcement. That table runner is my design called Dancing Spools. Dancing Spools is a pattern that's available here from the studio. It is a $10 pattern, but somebody wrote last night asking for the kit, and you can get a kit for this runner for $29.95. The $29.95 actually gives you everything you need to do the table runner top, the backing, and the binding. So that's all included in that price of $29.95. $10 pattern is extra, of course. It does not come in it. Lillian, the leather dots for your finger are $12.50. You have a package of 12. These are reusable, so you can take it off. What I usually do is if I'm stitching with this leather dot, I will put it on my finger. When I'm finished, take it off and maybe stick it to the base of the lampshade wherever I am. Then I take it when I'm ready to stitch again and put it back on. You can use them a few times. And then when the self-adhesive wears off, you can actually add something else underneath to make it sticky again. And I'm going to suggest something that I haven't tried, but these Wonder Dots are really, really sticky. And I have a feeling that if the stickiness gets lost on the leather thimble, you can actually use one of these sticky dots underneath, and they will last like for a long, 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 long time. There were some other questions about other tutorials. I want to give you an idea of some of the things that are in my mind. Many of you have ordered recently the Quilter's Grid, and I filled all the orders last week. I've done a tutorial or 2 or 3 on that before, and I know that some of you are still asking about how to use it in certain projects. Many of you have wanted to make the Trip Around the World table runner that I made, so that's probably going to be one of the upcoming tutorials. I'm not sure where it's going to fall, but I think it's going to be one of the upcoming tutorials. I'm trying to start with the tutorials where some of you have ordered kits and are starting to work on some of these projects, because I want you guys to kind of know where to go with starting the projects. One of the next projects to do will be the Snowman Joy table runner that's made with the stripped background. I'm going to be using strips that come from my Dash of Pepper Jelly Roll. If you haven't already ordered the Snowman of Joy Table Runner, that one is $14.50. So you may want to order it if you plan on. It's going to be a lot of fun. And the way that I'm doing mine, it's going to go together so fast, it's crazy. So you're really going to love this. So if you want to get Snowman Joy, they're $14.50. I do have a couple in stock at the moment, but I've got more on order. So we want to make sure that you guys get them in time for the tutorial or shortly after, okay? The quilter's grid I covered. I want to do more wool applique projects, but not just wool. This one is a cotton one, but I want to do more wool. And some of the wool projects will be simple things like pin cushions, the Snowman pin cushion, which so many of you love. I have a few patterns in stock for both of those on the old format, which is the poster board patterns. These were designed by me for an American company a while back, but they've been pulled back and are now in my domain and not the other company. So because of that, I have to redo these patterns in a new format, and that will be coming in 2, 3, 4 weeks probably. Until then, I have maybe 3 or 4 patterns of the Snowman and the sunflower pincushion. These, I have just a few in stock, and they're like $5 patterns if anybody wants them. They will be projects that we'll probably be doing in tutorials coming up. And the other one is, we went over this pattern on Saturday, and this is the Old World Snowman, and the designer made this 11 by 19 pillow, which is kind of cute, and I love the way that it looks, but I have another idea in my head as well. So I realized I have this stunning striped, ticker stripe woven homespun, and I think it's going to look great if I work a project using this. So if I make this and I'm inspired by what's in my head and it comes out the way I think it's going to come out, then I have quite a bit of this and I can do kits on that project, and I think that that's going to be an exciting tutorial also. So I want to bring projects to the table that are quite common, that are different. I want to do my take on a lot of stuff. I want to cover a lot of different ways of doing things. So I think it's a lot of fun. This is the first one, so it was like going to be probably a hit or miss on how I pulled different things up, how I set the table, because the first time around, nothing is perfect, and often nothing is ever perfect. But I hope that this morning, through the process of the demo, the tutorial, that I was able to inspire you to get into a little wool applique and enjoy this. I can't wait to get this stitching done this weekend so that I can show you the finished table topper on next Wednesday morning at 9. Please feel free to share the link to this video with any of your friends that you think would enjoy it. Many of you will be seeing this at a later time. It's difficult for me to pick a time that's convenient for everyone. So sometimes it's too early, sometimes it's too late. 9 o'clock works well for me at the moment because it's Wednesday morning. Although you see how things happen, the courier arrived in the middle of my video. So anyway, the videos will all be posted over to Facebook immediately after I finish the live. And then eventually it will be posted over to my YouTube channel. So the goal will be also to bring everything to both Facebook and YouTube so that they will always be accessible, and they'll always be there for you to be able to go back and play in your free time in case you missed a little point or you have a question about something. So that's super. So thank you all for joining me this morning. I had a lot of fun. We are 60 minutes in, and that's my goal. I thank you and wish you all the most wonderful and blessed day. You've really blessed me this morning by joining in for this tutorial. And if you have any questions that weren't answered, any comments to make, simply add them under this video. and I will get to them a little bit later, maybe not today because I have a lot of orders that have to get ready to go out. I have a lot of fabrics that need to be cut, but I will get back. I will read all the comments. I will answer where I can and get you your replies. And anybody that's requested products this morning, I'll make sure that I get a note made so that I get you what you want. Thank you. Happy stitching. I hope you have a great Wednesday. I'm going to go and have another coffee, number 3, and then I'm going to attack the day and get working on the orders. Have a wonderful Wednesday, everybody. Ciao. Happy stitching. Bye-bye.